Building functions, part 1. The first thing at the top of this page you see are the parent functions. Now what this means is we have a set of functions and their graphs before anything is done to them. So a linear function that you learned about in Math 1 is just y equals x, which is a straight line. And when you see the straight line, when we start doing things to it, your slope could be changed, or your y-intercept could be changed. It could be moved up or down. The slope could be changed, which may make it steeper, or it may make it, more flat. Then we get to your quadratic function, y equals x squared, which is your parabola. We just worked with parabolas in our last unit. A negative is going to flip it. So a negative could make your parabola open down like this. Our square root graph, square root of x. So it's going to start on the origin at 0, 0, and it's going to go up and to the right. Our inverse graph, y equals 1 over x. It's going to have two parts to it. You've got the part in the positive quadrant, quadrant 1. So this is considered quadrant 1, where everything's positive, and you're going to have in quadrant 3, where everything's negative. We also have exponential graph, where it starts off really slow, and then it's going to go up really fast. Okay, so that's our exponential graph. So these are our parent, what we call the parent functions, where nothing is being done to them. And what we're going to start doing to these graphs is we're going to move them around. We may reflect them. We may compress them. We may stretch them. And so you want to pay attention to this table here. This table is really going to help you kind of figure out what's being done to your graph. And like where your numbers are is going to play a key role in what's being done to the graph. So if you have a number, and more importantly, if it's a negative number out front, then that means it's going to be reflected across the x-axis. So a negative number out front is reflected across the x-axis. All right. If you have, so let's get rid of that. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay. So if you have a negative that is inside, so a negative inside, so if it's minus 3, then it's going to go 3 units to the right, for example. Okay, 3 units to the right. So if it's inside parentheses, when I talk about inside the parentheses, or inside your square root, or inside the fraction. So when I say inside, it's inside something, inside parentheses, inside your radical, or inside your exponent, okay? Outside, so when we're talking about outside, then it's going to go down. So negative means it's going to go down, okay? So it's going to go down when we're talking about that, okay? So basically, if you just look at this chart, when you see numbers, and we're going to go through these examples here, you just look at this chart, and that's going to help you know what it's doing, okay? So let's just jump in, and we'll start by going through these examples. So let me get rid of our highlights here. Okay. All right, so we're going to keep our chart here where we can see it. So we describe the translation. Okay, so we have a 3, a plus 3. Okay, now that plus 3 is outside the radical. Okay, it's a positive 3. So since it is a positive 3, you look on your table, positive 3 is outside the radical. Okay, so positive 3 is outside, it's positive, is outside the radical. So it's going to move up. Okay, so it's outside the radical, so it's going to move up. So we would say it goes up 3 units. So that's how you use your table. Okay. All right, let's get rid of that. Oh, it's not going to let me go back and get rid of that now. Okay, so it's not going to let me get rid of that. So I'll just switch and use different colors now. Okay, so now on B, you've got a -2, but it's inside your radical, okay? So let's switch here. We'll use a different highlighted color. We'll use red. So that -2 is inside the radical. So it's a minus, and it's inside the radical. So you look where they overlap, okay? So that means we're going to go right 2 units. So we're going to go right 2 units. Okay, right 2 units. Okay. Now, let's do green for C. So now we have a -1. So that -1 is on the outside. So we have outside, and it's a negative. Okay. So you look where those overlap. So that means it's going to go down. So down 1 unit. That means that graph would shift down 1 unit. All right, and let's do D. We'll do it in yellow. Okay, so that +4, so it's a plus, and it's inside the radical. That +4 is inside the radical, so we look where those overlap. So that means it's going left 4 units. Okay, so that's how you would read the graph. Okay, now if you have like a fraction less than 1, so let's look at this real quick. Let's go back to our highlighter here. So looking at this part, if you have a fraction in front, so let's say if you had like a 1/2 in front of like a square root of x, that would be a compression of 1/2. So that means it would be a compression. Or if you had a 3 square root of x, that would be a stretch of 3. Okay, so that's what these two things mean. Okay, so moving on. A blank in the front will reflect it across the x-axis. So a negative in front will reflect it across the x-axis. When multiplied by blank, the graph will stretch. So when multiplied by a whole number, sorry, I got ahead of myself. When multiplied by a whole number, we'll abbreviate, the graph will stretch vertically. And when multiplied by a fraction, the graph will shrink, and that's a compression. Okay? All right, so we're going to describe the translation. So there could be more than one thing going on down here. Okay? So on this one, you've got the 2. So that's a whole number. So it's a stretch by 2. Okay? On this one, you've got the negative. So it reflects across the x-axis. We also have the 1/2. So it compresses by a half. So there's 2 things going on there. All right, this one, C, has a lot going on. We got the negative, so it reflects across the x-axis. We stretch by 2. Okay, we have a -1 on the inside. So remember, a -1 on the inside, if we look back up here, you've got the minus right here. Here's the minus. And on the inside, so it's going to move right. So it's going to go right 2 units. and a plus 3 on the outside. So that means it's going to go up 3 units. Okay? Okay, so here on this one, now this is your parent function. Remember, that was up at the top of your page. That right there is the parent function. So remember, if we go back and look real quick, so this is coming from here. That's our parent function. So you're not talking about, you're not going to address this 2 right here. You're going to address the 1/2. So that is, it compresses by 1/2. And then that plus 1, that's on the outside. It's not in parentheses. It's not in the exponent. So it goes up 1 unit. Okay? All right. Now, here's just an x. So remember, x, that is the parent function. That is coming from this one. Okay? So that's that parent function. So we're describing the 2. That's considered outside. It's not in anything. That's considered outside. So that's just up 2 units. And that's all there is to that one. Okay. Once again, here we go. There's just your x. So kind of like E, there's your parent function. So here's your negative that reflects across the x-axis. The 1/2 here, that compresses by 1/2. And that minus 1, that's on the outside, so it goes down 1 unit. So we have described that translation. We've described everything that graph was doing. Okay, and so in your assignment, what you're going to be doing is you'll be describing or matching up everything that these graphs will be doing.